Welcome. In the past few months, I've been receiving a lot of questions on what has happened with the shift from PMBOK 6 to PMBOK 7. What are the changes? So I thought that I'd make this little video to explain my thoughts about it. So first of all, we are going to be talking about what are the changes from PMBOK 6 to PMBOK 7. Then I'll be talking about what probably is the most interesting point for you, meaning, especially if you're planning to take the exam, meaning what changes with the exam. Spoiler alert, not much. And finally, I'll be talking very shortly about, is the whole PMI system aligned and what can we expect in the future? So first of all, what are the changes from PMBOK 6 to PMBOK 7, or what are the changes in the current PMBOK 7? So in the past, from PMBOK 1 to PMBOK 6, we've seen an evolution of the project management body of knowledge, but it was always structured around process groups, knowledge areas, and the processes evolved. There were mostly growth in processes, and there was a realignment of processes, but the basic structure has always stayed the same. With the shift to PMBOK 7, this changes. What we are doing is we're moving from a structure based on process groups and knowledge areas to a structure based on principles and domains. We'll see in just a second what those are. But as you can see, it's really a different structure. So one could nearly argue that this is a different book. They could have given it a different title. Is it really a project management body of knowledge? So the PMBOK 7 does not really substitute the PMBOK 6. It is something different. There's a different thought process behind it that cannot substitute PMBOK 6. It looks at the project management arena from a higher perspective, from a broader picture perspective, and tries to understand it from a broader perspective. So let's have a look at what that perspective actually is. So PMBOK 6 was structured in knowledge areas and in process groups, whereas the process groups were in the second half of the book of the project management body of knowledge, and in particular they were in the American National Standards Institute standard structure for project management. In the PMBOK 7, this has been turned around. It's the American National Standards Institute part which comes first, and then comes the Project Management Body of Knowledge, PMBOK 7, which for those of us who are not in the United States is a little bit confusing, but hey, that's the way it is. So we move from knowledge areas to project performance domains, and we move from process groups in the ANSI standard to project management principles. And what are these? Well, let's have a look at the detail behind that. So in PMBOK 6, the project management body of knowledge was structured around the knowledge areas that we know well, all of the various different skill sets that you need to have as a project manager in order to be successful, while the ANSI standard was built around the life cycle of the project from initiation to closing. In the PMBOK 7, the ANSI standard is based around the principles, the key principles of project management. There are these 12 principles that are going from stewardship to change. You can see them there: stewardship, teams, stakeholders, values, system thinking, and so on. And the idea is that these areas cover the principles with which we run projects. The project management body of knowledge again looks at the project management work from a higher level. So the second half of the PMBOK 7 is looking at project performance domains. So what are the key areas that as a project manager one is paying attention to? Stakeholders, the team, again, just like we had the team in the principles, the life cycle approach, the ability to plan, the management of uncertainty. These are different aspects that relate to the project management performance domains. Other very important aspect that has been added to the PMBOK is the tailoring part. The tailoring part is focused on the fact that as a project manager, you don't have one method that you follow through for your project, for all of your projects, but you need to adapt the methods that you use to the projects that you're running. Another important aspect is the last element that you have there, the models, methods, and artifacts, and that's where we find the closest connection back to the PMBOK 6 and to the standard way of building the project. So they do look a little bit like inputs, outputs, and tools and techniques. And in particular, the approach to running projects is tackled here. So the whole predictive approach summarized in the PMBOK 6, for example, is included in here as one of the possible methods that you're going to be using. But agility and other approaches can also be considered in this context. Finally, there has been an addition to the whole PMBOK structure, which is the PMI Standards Plus. This is an online platform on which you have access to templates, to interviews, to knowledge that has been built and that is evolving, that is constantly evolving. The idea is that this can back you up in the choices that you make as a project manager. So that's the current structure of the PMBOK. Now let's have a look how this impacts the actual project management professional exam. What changes in the exam? Well, the first thing to say is that the exam has never been built around the PMBOK. Also, older editions of the PMBOK, while they were fundamental for the preparation of the exam, were not the guideline that described what is going to be asked at the exam itself. That was always found in a document called the Exam Content Outline. The Exam Content Outline has also evolved in time, and today we are at the latest edition that was issued in January 2021. Now you may notice that it was issued in January 2021, while the PMBOK 7 was issued in August 2021. Actually, the electronic version already in July 2021. The structure, however, is quite different compared to the previous exam content outlines. The previous exam content outlines were built around the 5 process groups. The 5 process groups which were aligned with the PMBOK up to that point. Today, the new ECO is built around 3 domains. 3 domains being people, processes, and the business environment. These are not the same domains as the ones that we see in the PMBOK 7. I'll have a short recap on that. So as you can see, there has been an important shift also from the exam content outline perspective. It is not the same shift as there's been in the PMBOK, though there are some overlaps. So there is some confusion there. The important is that you remember the exam is not based on the PMBOK, it's based on what the exam content outline says. In addition, there is a list of reference materials. So essentially, the topics that are outlined in the exam content outline have a certain content. That content, the content of the topics that can be addressed at the exam, is tackled in a series of books that you can find online. If you just type PMP exam reference materials into Google, you'll find PMI.org's website on which these books are listed. So as of Today, mid-September, these 10 books are the ones, mid-September 2021, these 10 books are the ones that are officially listed as reference materials for the PMP exam. And I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that the 6th edition of the Project Management Body of Knowledge is, in effect, one of the important books that are referenced in there. Look carefully, you will not see the 7th edition. So from the perspective of the exam, the 7th edition doesn't even figure in the reference materials. We will see what happens in the future. In 2022, will PMI add it to the reference material? If they do, of course, we will need to focus on making sure that also the preparation is adapted to it. But as of today, the PMP exam reference materials list does not include the 7th edition of the PMBOK. Now, you may be asking yourself a question if you look at this long list of books and asking yourself, hey, do I need to read all of those books? What do I need to do to prepare for the exam? Well, good news for you is that your trainers have done the work for you. That's the whole point. So they've already gone through this material and compared it to the exam content outline and identified what it is that you need to know from this material for your exam. So, summarizing, the topics that will be included in the PMP exam are defined in the exam content outline. Download it from pmi.org, it's easily accessible. However, the content of those topics can be identified by referring to the reference materials, the 10 books that we've just talked about, which are the core for any class which is preparing you for the PMP exam. And finally, a note, the PMBOK 6 is one of the reference materials, while the PMBOK 7 is not. So, what do you need to know? What do you need to do in order to prepare for the PMP exam? Well, first of all, find yourself a well-built course. Secondly, make sure that you have a PMP prep material, PMP prep manual, possibly from a good source. PMI itself has it for ATP classes. I would recommend that you download the Scrum Guide in addition to that. Now, that is not part of the reference material. It is not part of the recommended materials. However, I personally find that I would recommend including the Scrum Guide in that. Make sure that you have access to the exam content outline. Download it. Make sure that you're covering all the materials in it. PMBOK 6 is important. The Agile Practice Guide is important. Make sure that you have an exam simulator from a trusted source that you're using. There are plenty of trusted sources out there. PMIQ from IIL is one of them. Fast Track from RMC is another. There are plenty of good materials out there. And in addition, add self-study time. Right? Add time. I need to add 50 to 100 hours depending on how much experience you have, how close your experience is to the actual methodology. You'll need to add it to it. Finally, taking a helicopter view of the whole system, what is the situation? Well, one quick example. Comparing the domains from the ECO, the exam content outline, and the PMBOK 7. Eco domains, people, processes, business environments. Right? So while the PMBOK 7 performance domains are, as you can see, a very different logic in it. Now, for sure, we can map some of these, maybe teams, stakeholders, to people. We might have the approach and the life cycle and the planning and the project work, which kind of map up to processes. We surely can do some forced connection there, but it is a forced connection. They are clearly not aligned. They are not thought to be aligned. One of them are project performance domains. The others instead are categorizations of topics for an exam. So they have two very different meanings. They are not really aligned. And across the whole system, as you can see, the PMBOK 7 is structured with the 12 principles and the 8 domains. The PMBOK 6 has the process groups and the knowledge areas. So they are not aligned amongst themselves. The exam content outline has the 3 domains. The PMI Standards Plus has all the digital content. Then there's the 10 books, which are each one structured in their own way. And for those of you who care, ATP instructors, the authorized training provider instructors, by the way, their own preparation that they need to do through PMI is structured around 5 topics. So as you can see, there's quite a broad spectrum of different approaches here. PMI is presumably going to try to align these in the next editions in the future. Currently, I don't really see how they are planning to align them, but in any case, there is some space for improvement here. So, summarizing, for those of you who are taking the exam in the short term, possibly within this year, within 2021, PMBOK 6 is your main go-to guideline. The PMBOK 7 is likely to become important maybe next year, but in any case, it will not substitute PMBOK 6. You will still need to reference also to PMBOK 6. So I hope that you found this useful, and I wish you a lot of good luck and success with your project endeavors. Cheers, bye.